Running a healthcare practice in the US is complex and challenging. It requires expertise in a variety of areas beyond just providing quality medical care. We battle insurance complexities, staffing shortages, and patient and revenue management. Hello and welcome to the Efficient Care Podcast, a unique podcast series that brings you conversations with healthcare practice owners and innovators where we deep dive into their journeys and business learnings over the years. I'm Shruti Mehrotra, Head of Marketing at Aarogram. In today's very special episode, Kash, co-founder of Aarogram, chats with Leonor Pereira, CEO of Sleep and CPAP Center in California. Leonor has been successfully running a chain of sleep centers for close to 12 years now, and she has a hang of running this business like no other. She has a degree in law to top it off and brings her critical thinking skills to diversify revenue channels for her sleep center. Cash, who is a Johns Hopkins Business School alumni, loves to delve into all things that bring efficiency to healthcare practices. Listen on to the conversation right here on the Efficient Care Podcast.
Leonor, we are so excited to have you with us today. Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm excited to be here.
That's great. I have heard so much about your journey. We have been talking about this for a while. Can you tell our listeners a bit about how you got started in the sleep center business and how has this journey unfolded for you?
Oh, wow. So I have been involved in, first of all, in the medical industry since 1995. I was a young college student working as a medical sales rep. And the first company that I worked for, I was selling oxygen tanks and concentrators, and eventually the company added CPAP and BiPAP devices. So I was doing that through, I think, my undergrad, first, second year. And then while I was in that company, I got a little sister of mine to work there. And I eventually finished college, went on to law school, while my sister became a little bit more involved in that field. And I think it was in 2003 where we kind of partnered up and started opening up a respiratory company, providing the CPAPs and BiPAPs and sleep labs. And so it's been a long time now that we've been exposed to the sleep industry, and it has been really good for us. It has been really good to us. And we're continuing. Now we have sleep labs in California, Nevada, and Texas. And so in collaboration with my sister, we've been able to keep each other informed from, obviously laws and insurance providers and reimbursements are different in different states. So we've gained a lot of knowledge, and I'm excited to share it with you guys.
That's an interesting journey, and it's been quite a few years, right? So how has the sleep medicine practice evolved over the years while you have been involved with it?
Wow, it has changed. Definitely. I'll just tell you, let's say 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we used to be able to pretty much see anybody without an authorization, without a referral. A patient could just come and say, I need a sleep study. Now it's just so much harder. But I think the biggest thing that has changed is on the profit side. 10 years ago, I remember we used to get on average $2,000 for a sleep study, an in-lab sleep study. Home sleep tests, back then we didn't have them. And so $4,000, I think we used to get for a CPAP setup, sometimes more. I'm just saying on average. And now we're lucky we get like $600. Contracted providers want to give you Medicare rate, 80% of Medicare rate, 110% on Medicare rate. Whatever that small amount they reimburse us, it's barely enough to pay the staff, pay the overhead, pay the medical director if you're an independent diagnostic facility and you're paying the doctor for the review of the reports, pay the scoring. I mean, it's really hard. And I think that a lot of sleep centers have compromised quality care because we have to do quantity, you know? So I think that that's the most detrimental change that I've seen, and obviously the most important, because as much as we're here to care for the patient, we're also here to make money. And so now we have to have more creative ways to do so. And I guess sleep centers, more creative ways would be to also become a full service center where not only are you doing the sleep study, but you're also doing the treatment portion of it.
So you've touched upon so many important aspects to it, including prior authorization, access to the quality sleep care for the patients, right? And ultimately, also about running the business. So we have so much to unpack here. But first, it's also important to, talk about, the role of sleep medicine in the overall health, for the sake of general audience and people in the industry also, to remember that we are serving the important aspect of the overall health of patients, right? So
Absolutely.
why does sleep matter so much, for the overall health of a patient? What are the uh, misconceptions that you come across about sleep medicine?
Well, as far as misconceptions, I think that one of the biggest ones is that thin people don't have sleep apnea. Before we started getting more awareness, more knowledge of what sleep apnea is, we used to think that when a person was snoring, oh, they were sleeping soundly. Now we know that they're dying, they're killing their cells, Another misconception, I think, is that if you're thin, you don't suffer from sleep apnea. We think that it's only for obese or overweight people, and it's not so. Yesterday, we saw a firefighter, very very fit, I mean, young. He was really young. And I was shocked to see that it wasn't necessarily obstructive sleep apnea. He had central sleep apnea. And so I think that now we've learned that sleep apnea is not just for overweight people. Sleep apnea is not just for adults. It's also for kids. There's a lot of kids, I mean, as young as one, that snore, stop breathing. And I think people are becoming aware that it's something that affects everybody. As far as the role that we play, I mean, sleep is vital. We spend half of our life sleeping. So it's such an important thing for overall health. We already know that inadequate sleep, especially sleep apnea, leads to heart attacks, strokes, obesity, diabetes, anxiety, decreased brain function, memory loss, low fertility rates. I mean, we have immediate effects of low energy, sleepiness, irritability, memory, and the long-term effects. So sleep medicine is always going to be around, and it's sleep, is vital to our survival.
You put it very well. I think it's kind of crazy that sleep has so many downstream health impacts,
Absolutely.
as well as overall cost as well,
Yes.
right? But still, more than 80% of cases of sleep apnea are still undiagnosed, right?
Yes.
But the sleep medicine is evolving, and new things are happening. So hopefully, we can address this problem. So how do you stay up to date with the latest research and development in sleep medicine? I remember you saying that you also perform evaluation studies for research organizations, right?
Yes, actually, right now our center is starting a new study with a pharmaceutical that is testing a drug for ADHD in young adults. And we've done a lot of research with different types of companies that are testing a drug, whether it's for adults or for children. So that's one of the things that we're doing, but we don't necessarily get inside information from that because it's it's a subject. It's not a patient. It's not John Smith is a subject, a number. And so we don't get a lot of knowledge from that. I think most of our knowledge pretty much comes for us that we are an accredited sleep center. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine has done an excellent job in keeping its members and the public abreast of sleep issues, developments in the industry. They even give us knowledge and awareness as far as billing, insurance issues. It's not just sleep medicine and how it's evolving. So that's one of the most important ways that we keep, abreast of what's happening, and it's through the AASM.
And the follow-up question would be, what role does a sleep center play in the sleep medicine landscape?
Sleep, like I said before, it's always going to play a role. Sleep centers are always going to be necessary. There's certain things that now that we have so many home sleep tests and a lot of insurance companies are trying to eliminate patients going to a sleep center because of the cost. There's certain things that as home sleep tests cannot detect restless legs, cannot detect some periodic leg movements. So I think we're always going to have the need for a sleep center. There's also patients that have a certain disability that they cannot make it, or they need to come into a center because that home sleep test is not, they don't know how to do it, or they have some kind of problem. So I think sleep centers are always going to be in the sleep medicine landscape. They're not going to go away. So I also, for example, see the need for sleep centers continuing to be significant when we think about a certain type of group that right now, for example, we have truck drivers that need to be tested for sleep apnea if they have a certain BMI and a certain neck circumference. And so we work with a lot big trucking companies that or companies that train truck drivers, and whenever a class is done, before they go and they get their license, we get a bunch of truck drivers coming in to get that sleep apnea test so that they can take it to their medical examiner and they can get the okay to go and get their commercial driver's license. And a lot of these truck drivers, they come, they pick up a home sleep test, and this is a 400-pound person, 300-pound person that you can hear how heavy they breathe, while they're even talking to you, picking up the test. And sometimes they come to bring the test, and the test has no sleep apnea. And so what can you think happened? What I think is that they probably put that test in their 12-year-old so they could pass it. A lot of these people are getting smart. And so I think that as commercial truck drivers, maybe if they continue having major, accidents that is affecting the public, and this is a person that has sleep apnea and a home sleep test didn't pick it up, I think that eventually we're going to get to where they're going to be required to come into a sleep center, show their driver's license so that we know exactly who they are. Unless home sleep tests evolve where maybe a person is scanned or something and it's monitored all night with a camera, at least for that particular type of group, I don't see how home sleep tests are going to protect us, the public, from tired truck drivers who have sleep apnea, but a home sleep test that they didn't, So sleep centers are always going to be relevant, and we're starting to get now with the knowledge that parents are getting that when their baby's snoring, there's something serious, or older kids, and now kids who have sleep apnea they're being diagnosed with ADD, ADHD. a home sleep test is not appropriate for that. It's like parents feel more comfortable having their child go to a facility to have a comprehensive sleep study. I don't think they trust a little device that it's going to pick up what they need for their child. So sleep centers are always going to be relevant.
Yes. On the other hand, you still see, sleep centers, especially the independent sleep centers, getting consolidated or going out of business. So you mentioned the business challenges of operating a sleep center. So could you elaborate on some of those challenges, and how do you handle those challenges?
Well, I think that as we already kind of touched on the subject of reimbursement. Clearly, that's one of the biggest challenges, where sleep centers, especially the smaller ones that are not associated with a hospital, it's difficult when we're getting such little money from the insurance to be able to provide quality care and to be profitable. So that's always going to be a challenge. I think the other challenge is staff, just having staff that is cross-trained. I think one of the mistakes that a lot of sleep centers make is that they'll hire staff. They'll hire somebody to check benefits, somebody to do the billing, somebody to do the scheduling. And these people have their individual roles, their individual departments, and they're not working together. And so I think this is one of the weaknesses of sleep centers, that when they compartmentalize this different roles, they lose sight of the main goal. It's one of the biggest challenges, I think, for sleep centers, is to realize that in order for them to not just make more money, but also provide good care and quality service for the patient and the referral source, they need to have staff that is cross-trained, staff that understands when a referral comes in, whether there's a need for an authorization. If so, do it efficiently. Does the patient have a deductible? Does the patient have a co-insurance? And to kind of be able to see the patient as a whole, the patient's insurance as a whole, and it's not like, okay, so a department did the authorization, and then that person who schedules the patient, and then, oh my God, he's got a big deductible. Let's send him a bill. And so patients get these surprise bills. And for smaller centers, you're not going to last long when patients are angry at you and they tell the doctors, and the doctor's like, oh, that center sends surprise bills. And that's because the person checking eligibility and benefits is not communicating with the scheduler, or the employees don't care. They just do their job, So I think proper employee training, I think it's vital for the success and survival of at least smaller centers.
Yeah, the staffing challenges affect a lot of other, parts of the U.S. healthcare system as well. So it's no surprise that it affects, the sleep centers too. And then it affects the patient care as well, right? So in that sense, the workflow efficiency also becomes important, right? And it shows when, your staff is well trained, but also that you have proper process in place, the workflow, have clear steps for your staff to follow. So how important is the workflow efficiency while running your sleep center?
Obviously, you have to identify what is more time consuming and allocate that to somebody else. Like, for example, eligibility and authorizations. Those are time consuming things. And so you could still cross-train an employee to look at the eligibility, the authorization, and say, okay, so this patient's deductible is really high. There's an authorization that we need to seek, but maybe have somebody else do that that work that is time consuming, and I think that as far as managing the workflow, definitely seeking an authorization is time consuming, not just because you have to initiate it, but because you have to be on top of whether you got it or not. You can't just wait for the insurance company to send you a letter saying your procedure's authorized or not. You just can't do that. You want to speed that up. And one of the ways that you can speed that up, because if the insurance company in 7 days says, yes, your authorization is approved, proceed with a home sleep test or an in-lab study, but you're not checking, your staff doesn't have the time to check, it could be a month or two before you call that patient. And nobody wants a sleep lab that is scheduling 2-3 months later. The patient doesn't want it, the doctor doesn't want it, and it's just not good. So I think workflow management is very important in delegating that task to somebody else so that your employees can focus on more, quality communication, not just patients, but the physicians, especially for smaller sleep centers. I see a lot of sleep centers that don't update their referral sources. They don't update their doctors. You say you get a referral from a physician in January, and then you see the patient in March, and it's like this 3-month gap, and eventually it's like, what happened when you have the doctor's office calling you, asking about a patient, you're not doing your job, and if you are able to delegate those time-consuming tasks to another company or to another department, but your employees will also be cross-trained to identify that, you'll have more time to do the most important thing, which is being able to focus on more revenue, not those little tedious tasks that are necessary.
Why is it especially a challenge for sleep centers or for the sleep medicine?
Like we were talking about how sleep medicine has evolved. Insurances don't want to, for example, give you those in-lab studies that pay a little bit more. They don't want to necessarily authorize a sleep study unless the patient has other certain conditions. And so they've made it very difficult, very time-consuming for a sleep center. And unfortunately, there's not much you can do. I mean, pretty much you're at the mercy the individual insurance companies. And the best thing that you can do is, obviously, when you're with your contracts, when you're in network, you already know. You kind of know that they're going to require a authorization, or you get the authorization directly from your provider. No big deal. But like we were talking about, those contracts don't pay us well. So we sometimes want to work with, maybe out of network that might pay you better, or other insurance providers that they might pay you better. But if you are able to have some kind of system where you identify those insurances that are going to be time consuming and those that are not, then you can certainly speed that process up. And this is where also the cross-training and giving those tasks to somebody else comes into play. For many years in our center, we have been able to identify a lot of these Blue Crosses that are going to give us a hard time, and those that are going to say, yeah, do it, And there's certain ways that you can find out. Blue Cross has a lot of prefixes. I can tell from the prefix that this is a group that is for law enforcement, a group that is for teachers, I can tell you sometimes their deductible is the same one for everybody. They don't need an authorization, you know. So for sleep centers that have those different departments compartmentalized and they don't communicate with each other, you're never going to learn that. You're not going to learn that. It's sad because that's how you speed up the process and that's how you increase your profitability.
I was going to ask, that what is the one thing that you could change if you were to about the prior auth process? Is there any other wish list would you have when it comes to prior auth?
Eradicate it. Cut it out.
Okay.
No outs needed.
Yeah, that's AMA is also advocating for us.
No, but certainly being able to tell if it's even a service that requires no off. I mean, there's Aetna, for example, in our state and in our contract, the patient might have a deductible, but sleep is not doesn't fall within that deductible, right? Like, okay, that's cool. So if you kind of know that, I know that a lot of centers, they when they check eligibility, they either don't believe it or they still apply the deductible. And in certain companies, it's like certain insurance companies, like sleep is probably considered like a routine physical. It doesn't need an off. So predictability. If we had something that with time can give us that a little bit of that heads up and a little bit of that magic that we want to know, that like it's gonna speed up the process of scheduling and collecting money and worrying if you're gonna have appeals. Having somehow that heads up, I mean, it's helpful. So
yes. So I like your idea where you suggested that sleep should be like a routine physical,
yeah.
So that is definitely a role, that sleep centers can play and should be playing. And I want to remind, all of us that things like prior auth is not just about, the business of the sleep centers, but also affects the access to quality care for the patients,
Absolutely.
Right? So it matters to all of us. So when it comes to business side, what are the other ways the sleep center can diversify revenue streams? So one of these ways you already talked about, that there are underserved groups, patient groups like truck drivers and transportation staff, for which the sleep health is a critical requirement for the profession. So you could serve them, but are there other ways that sleep center can play more active role and in that sense also diversify revenue stream?
I mean, I think there's a lot of ways that they can manage or increase the revenue cycle. What obviously adding the treatment to the sleep center. It not only gives you more revenue, but those patients that you set up on, let's say, a CPAP machine, they gain weight, they lose weight. Maybe they need to come in again to have their CPAP titrated. Or, I mean, even when they have an automatic CPAP, there's issues with the mask or whatever. So it's also opportunities to have your patients come back for a titration sometime later in time, right? I think that another important metric that you have to track is the referrals, where they're coming from. I think that a lot of centers, they just expect to get doctors referring to them. And you might with initially marketing, but you can't forget about that. And you can't just go and market and not give quality care and updates. And if you're going to say, oh, we're going to we're going to do a sleep study within a week or two, or you're going and advertising that you're going to provide a report within a week or whatever, you got to keep your word. You can't just get a referral and then 3 months later you're sending the sleep study to the doctors, So I think just taking care of those referral sources. Some of these doctors that we have I mean, they'll send me 3 patients a week, 5 patients, and it's smaller little offices that you don't expect. And it's like some that I'm not even contracted, they send me really good because we provide good quality care. I think another thing that is not considered for sleep centers to increase their revenue is those Google reviews, absolutely, in advertising. I mean, nowadays it seems like people, when they're going to come, they Google you. And I remember, I mean, 12, 15 years ago, nobody cared, but now these people are actually like reading the reviews, and if you don't treat them well, they'll leave you a bad review, and trust me, that makes a difference. I have so many people find us, people who have insurance, but they don't know what to do. The husband snores, the boyfriend snores, their kid snores. They don't know what to do. They Google sleep apnea, a sleep center comes up, and it's like, you had the nicest lab, you had the most reviews, you had good reviews. Advertising with Google, I think it's a game changer. At least it has been for me. And the reviews, it has definitely helped, because the more reviews you have and the more content you put out there, you come up higher in searches, you know? I mean, that's just the metrics of Google. So I think a lot of sleep centers don't realize the power of that. So
That's great. I think these are very effective marketing strategies for the sleep centers to follow as well. I want to remind us, just like prior authorization, the effective marketing, especially the referral coordination with the referral sources, also about the quality patient care. It's not just about getting the patient acquisition, the marketing for the sleep centers.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about another thing that I watch out for, having technicians that are knowledgeable, and I hate to say, but charismatic. There's a lot of females that come into the center, and if you have a tech that looks scary, and that person, maybe they had a split and it wasn't completed, they don't want to come back, or they want to bring their husband. So you better have a bedroom for the caretaker or the person. And it's something that I don't think a lot of sleep labs consider. I think they'll hire sleep techs because they need them, but they don't take that into account. I mean, it's sad to say, but you need to have a technician that is not threatening, that it's not, so quiet, because it's a very intimate process when you're putting the leads on a patient, and so you need to have somebody that it has a good bedside manner. That is it makes the person that's gonna sleep there comfortable. You're sleeping somewhere different, so you need to feel safe, and the safety comes with a nice, personable, non-threatening tech. And I think that having that also is super important for the success of a sleep center.
That's a great advice, and somewhat non-conventional. So I'm sure that will be very useful. So how can we make the sleep medicine more accessible to those who need it the most? So that is one aspect, is the from the insurance side, we can make it more accessible. Are there other ways we can make it more accessible?
Nowadays, with the fact that sleep apnea is becoming more prominent, people are more knowledgeable about it. I mean, sleep apnea is made fun of with comedians, and so a lot of people are coming, and they either are not the type that goes to their primary doctor all the time, or they have no insurance. So I definitely think that having an agreement with your staff, that if it's a patient that calls for a sleep study and they have a high deductible or an insurance, offer lower prices. I mean, I have so many cash patients, let's say. And for our DME side, we have payment plans. There's a lot of people that need a sleep test. And so you want to make it, accessible to them, and you have to try to work with them. I mean, there's so many centers that it's like, they put such a high amount on a sleep study, and people's like, I'd rather not. Or they forget to say, okay, we have a whole sleep test, and after that you can get an automatic CPAP machine, and make it just a little bit more affordable. I offer patients other options to pay. I think that makes it more accessible for those that are uninsured. Like I said, we work with a lot of truck drivers. 90% don't seem to have insurance, because they're their own company, their own person, and they don't buy insurance for themselves. And these are the ones that require the treatment. They are always going to come to your center to purchase supplies, to get their data downloaded. And so this is this type of people, you got to make it accessible for them by not charging an arm and a leg because they're not insured.
That's really interesting, because having cash patients also is an indicator that it is greatly,
Needed. Yeah.
it's needed. Is people are seeking, even if they have to pay out of pocket, and that means there is a gap, and the gap is sometimes, if a patient can afford it, they can pay out of pocket, but then there would be a lot of other people who can't afford it, right? So that's where the payers, I think, need to do some work to make it more accessible, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
overall, looking at the larger picture, especially focus on the sleep center industry, I think there are things that sleep centers can do from their side. There are things that the peers could do it from their side to make it better. You have shared a lot of great advice and insights for the sleep centers to follow. Are there other things you want to share? Are there like any internal metrics that you measure to understand, the effectiveness or efficiency of running your sleep center that the other sleep centers can also learn from?
For me, in my experience, is just having that ability to track your referrals, because then if there's a problem. Even that, I mean, a lot of the smaller sleep centers are not necessarily contracted by all insurance companies or HMOs. And so if you kind of track where you're getting your referrals, even contracted in-network providers, for example, I'll get an authorization from with an HMO or somebody I'm contracted in. And that doctor, yeah, he's in that network, but he also has he also accepts other insurance companies. So having a system where you can, especially if you're a small center, where you can track your referral sources and somehow market to them, let them know that you also accept other insurances, you're going to get more. You're going to get a lot more referrals, and some of them could be really good. There's a lot of insurances that still pay really well. So I think that's one of something that is overseen. Like, okay, you're happy that you're getting all these referrals and you're contracted when you keep getting those authorized sleep studies. But you forget about the fact that those doctors that choose you from a list of providers have more to give. So
that's great advice. So at Aarogram, we believe that being efficient in your business as well as a healthcare provider also means providing more patient-centric care and innovating on the go. So we ask this question to every guest we have on our podcast, and it's a fun one. So what's the most ridiculous way you have ever solved a workflow problem in your healthcare setting? You probably have shared some, but to make it more fun, like tell us more.
I don't know. I don't know about a workflow problem solved by a ridiculous way, but I'll
Yeah,
share.
what is a hack that you have employed to solve and fix the thing? It may not be the traditional way you would think, but like I know you are very creative in terms of when it comes to running the business. So it would be interesting.
That's a good question. I can't think of like a ridiculous way, but I'll share something funny. So I had a person, I mean, it's something funny, but like, that could solve revenue, let's say, or lack thereof. Um, Somebody walked in and they were in the wrong suite. And it's like, oh, I guess from where they come in, they can see that, bedrooms. Like, oh, what do you guys do here? And I said, oh, we're a sleep center. And he goes, oh, people come to sleep here? I go, yeah, even during the day. We rent our beds for power naps. And so I was being sarcastic, obviously. And so I think the next day, two people walked in. They were working the same place. And they walked in and they said, I wanted to make an appointment for a power nap in your center. And they were serious. It was so funny because they really thought that they could come during their lunch hour and pay like $20 or something for a power nap. And I thought, oh my God, what a great idea. That would certainly help streamline more revenue. During the day when your sleep lab is empty, rent it for power naps.
So that answers the question I asked you about, how a sleep center can diversify their revenue stream. So
yeah,
that's
you have empty bedrooms during the day. Why not? I don't know. Rent it to masseuse too. It's funny, but
it's funny. Okay, so Leonor, that was incredibly insightful. So thank you so much for the lovely chat, Leonor. And
thank you for allowing me to share that. I mean, I hope that this is useful for smaller centers. I hope they get some ideas that they can, utilize to survive and to expand if they want to.
So we learned so much from you today. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
This episode was brought to you by Aarogram. Thanks for listening to our podcast today. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite platform. And if you have any questions or comments about today's episode, we'd love to hear from you. You can find Aarogram's LinkedIn and website address in the description box. Thanks for tuning in.